Today on What Went Wrong, we talk about independence and freedom.
Oh, the space shuttles from Armageddon.
Hi, I'm Brett Mauser, and I've made quite a lot of films. And I couldn't have done it if I was working under a studio system.
Oh, no.
Or had investors, or put a lot of money into the films.
No.
I wanted to say things, I wanted to do things, and so many of them that I wanted, so much of what I wanted to say and do. If you had somebody over there with like $50,000 over your head, or in a studio system in Hollywood, you couldn't do it.
No.
Because of profit,
Yeah.
which I totally get.
I get it, yeah.
I'm not gonna argue with that.
I love profit.
Yeah.
I dig it.
If that's your goal, is to make as much money as you can with that film, then yes, you're going to
You're going to do it.
You know, you're going to play by a certain set of rules.
Right.
Money was not a big thing for me.
That's
I
a good-
love money.
Yeah.
I like it.
Who doesn't?
I wish I had it. Had more of it. But when it came to my films, that wasn't that was my way to express myself. The
Right.
ultimate form of freedom and
Yeah.
independence.
Yeah.
Which is why, like we were talking with cancel culture about how when you try to shut somebody up, you're squelching their freedom, their liberties,
Right.
their independence, and that's why I want nothing to do with it.
Right.
That's why I'm adamantly opposed to it, and will fight it every step of the way.
I'm opposed to restrictions of First Amendment in any form. I don't care. I'll let Nazis walk down the streets waving their flags. I'll let Klansmen wear their pajamas.
In when I was going to school in the 3rd and 4th grade, we were being taught about the First Amendment, and they said exactly what we were talking about. Hey, if you restrict the KKK from walking down and having their parade and not letting them have their parade, then you and your organization will be next.
Yeah.
And they were taught us that in
Because
school.
the pendulum swings back the other direction, and then when the next guys get in charge, well, then you're not going to be able to march down the street, and the Klan will.
Yeah. But now in school, we're teaching people about... I don't even know what the hell we're teaching
They're
them
just
anymore.
teaching them to test, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
It shows, too, because the grades are dropping, and kids' ability to succeed is falling.
Yeah.
I've never seen such... most of the people I see coming into my line of work, it's weird to say, but we don't get new people.
Mm-hmm.
They're several years old by the time they can get to where we are. It's your training is not. We don't got any like 21-year-olds coming and doing what we're doing. They're in their late 20s, early 30s before they hit us. But what I'm starting to see and hear and talk about in other places, what is that you've got kids who may be technologically savvy, but they are deficient in coping mechanisms and the ability to get along with individuals who may or may not agree with them. And so that is becoming a problem, which is one of the reasons you're seeing more and more violence in the workplace. One of the reasons you're seeing, specifically in the airports, more and more people getting arrested in the airports for being psychopaths. It's one of the reasons you're seeing suicide rates skyrocketing. It's not helping that everyone's getting locked at home. I mean, the suicide rate for kids, I think below 18 is up 400 something percent. And from age 40 to 20 something is 350%.
Yeah, and where is that in the news? No, we got to talk about how you got to wear a mask.
Yeah,
you forget to tell about the people who are dying and from drug overdoses, alcoholism, and all this other stuff.
I put it this way: I know more people who have died of suicides than I know who have died of COVID.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I know one person who died of COVID, and he was in his 70s, and I know a bunch of people, veterans, friends of mine, some others who died of suicide, or friends of mine's kids who died of suicide because of all this other stuff. So the coping mechanisms are not there anymore, partially because people are not being exposed as children to the idea that conflict is okay. And how do you resolve conflict? How do you deal with conflict?
Well, there's also that sheltering issue. We were talking about this a little bit earlier on in one of the other previous episodes, but that I didn't chime in on. But when we were talking about kind of people not realizing what the world is like and what the dangers are there.
Right.
I remember, like 9/11, how it shattered so many people.
Yeah.
But people of our generation, it impacted us. It
Yeah.
affected us,
Yeah.
but we didn't go nuts. We
Yeah.
didn't lose our.
Yeah.
Because one of those reasons is because when I was in high school, I remember us being told, or one of our assignments was to read A Last Babylon,
Yeah.
which was about nuclear fallout after World War III and how they survived and what they had to do. And that book gave me nightmares.
Down in Florida back in the 50s is when it was set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Uh,
they're talking
and then-
about McCoy, which is Orlando.
Yeah. And then that sent me to go see On the Beach, you know, the old 1960s
The old 1960 version, right?
And and it was just like this no hope, and to know that nuclear war and nuclear fallout and the end and the end of the
End of
world,
days.
end of days, was literally hovering over your head and could be hit at any moment.
In 1983, a miniseries came out called The Last
The
Day After.
The day after. Yeah, because
After, not day after. But anyway, it's for those of you who've never seen it. It's a made-for-TV movie. Has Jason Robards and John Lithgow.
I remember him getting flash blindness on that first.
Yeah, the kid got the flash blindness.
it was
All-star
Robards, too.
John No, he didn't have flash blindness. He just,
Because he got out of the car and he saw it.
oh, that's true. And it had not John Leguizamo. What's his name from Police Academy?
Steve Gutenberg.
Steve Gutenberg. And this whole cast, they're up in Kansas, near the University of Kansas, and World War III happens. And there it is. And it's how these people exist. Okay. And it was on TV, NBC, for 2 nights. 2 nights, 3 nights, whatever it was. It was 4 hours, 2 nights. Holy shit, dude. It blew, it rocked my world watching this thing. My parents didn't want me to watch it, but of course I have ways. And then, of course, there was another one was called The Dawn's Early Light, which came out on, it was HBO, I think it was, in 1986, 87, about about how the nuclear war happened, how it was prevented because the guys who were on the Looking Glass, called Countdown to Looking Glass, it was the 747, the mobile command post, a big old 7-4, about how something had happened and there's a B-52 crew and they're going to go bomb, and then they do, and then there's a subsequent backup, and the way that basically they saved the world is the guys flying one of the aircraft had the warmongers on board that were trying to, the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President who were trying to kill everybody, and the President who had been injured in a bomb blast had been trying to stop everything and they couldn't, and then the one crew with James Earl Jones. He said, and what happened was these 2 planes, the one plane realized the other one was following them. There's no fighters. They're all by themselves. And they're about to give the order to launch another strike, which would have ended the world. And the guys flying the airplane turned just to turn the airplane. No one thought about it, but they'd seen the other plane behind them, and they actually ended up running into each other. And so we're watching this show, and the whole idea was the guys in charge may not be on your side. And that was a whole different way of looking at, not only do we have nuclear war hanging over our shoulder, because for those of you who don't know, nuclear war only ended as a definite concept in the 90s. I mean,
The wall came down.
Yeah, but the wall came down in 1989. And then the Soviet Union fell apart in 91. So anyone who grew up, who was born before like 81, 82, remembers the threat of nuclear war hanging over. I knew where the shelters were as a kid growing up. Whenever I would go on a new base with my father, first briefing we got, here's where the shelter is. If you hear 3 horns, go to the shelter. I was a kid. I was a child. I was in my before preteens. I was a little kid. That being realized, kids today don't have that concept, don't have that specter, don't have that thought of their own mortality.
And it's the first time in history, because if you look, the threat of nuclear war, 50s on, 1945 on, basically, since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Before that, World War II. Before that, World War I.
Yeah.
Before that, living out in the frontier. Death was around every corner.
Civil War
in
before that.
Every society, in every part of human history.
Yeah.
Until now.
Yeah. It's one of the first times, I guess you could say, that someone growing up has not had this thought of sudden, immediate, horrific death hanging over them. Not that it's changed, because let's be honest, kids, the nuclear weapons haven't gone away.
Yeah,
If in fact it's gotten worse. Because I'll tell you what now, if Iran gets a couple of nuclear weapons. We're talking about the guys that don't mind throwing or supporting throwing missiles into Israel. And I know Israel says they don't have the bomb. I'm not saying that I know they do. I'm just saying Israel says they don't have the bomb. And if you give someone who has professed their unending hatred for a people like the Jews, and if you give these people nuclear weapons with an unstable religious regime who believes that when they die, they all get to go to Allah if they die fighting the infidels, okay? We may yet see what happens when nuclear war returns to what could happen. It is something that absolutely changed our lives. Gave us the idea and the concept of understanding that freedom and independence does not come free. There's a cost to be paid. The cost is whether it's military vigilance, whether it's the understanding that people are going to kill you just because of who you are, whether it's this all-encompassing sense of dread that hangs over everything that you then just learn to live with, like we did. Because people ask me, how did you live with the fact that they could bomb you at any time? I was like, be honest with you, I understood that we could die. Okay, I got it that it could happen, but then I put it in the back of my head and I continued being a kid. I played baseball and I rode my bike, and it was just kind of one of these things like, if the alarms go off, I'll try to hit a shelter, you know, but it wasn't something that stopped us from living, from being free, from having and exercising and participating in independence.
And maybe that's why so many people are sacrificing their freedom and liberties for safety now.
Yeah.
Is because they've never felt unsafe.
Right. And why people like us are like, go f*** yourselves.
Yeah.
Because I've been unsafe before. Nuclear war used to hang over my my head every moment of every day of my entire existence until I was 19 or until I was 18 years old. 19 years old. 18 years old. 19. 18. Doesn't matter. Until I was almost an adult. Until I was an adult. Okay, from the time I was born to whatever, there was this constant specter of horrible, horrible death. You know, because we didn't live too far from Houston, and we weren't going to get caught in the first blast, but the radiation was going to kill us within a year or two.
Yeah.
You know, if the starvation didn't kill us, or if the wild roving bands of marauding, you know, cannibals didn't kill us, you know, or whatever was going to happen. That's 30 years ago now. Now, everyone who thinks that we've stopped making missiles. We haven't stopped making missiles. We make more and better missiles now. The ability for us to destroy the planet has actually gotten scarier. I don't want to freak everybody out, but yeah, the ability for the United States and Russia, mostly the United States, because Russia, they have metallurgical issues, they have rocket issues, they have all kinds of other problems. I don't want to get into that because that's not what this is about. But the ability for us to destroy hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten worse. But we lived under that for so long. So people like you and me, you know, the older generation now, because we're in our late 40s, grew up under the specter of death. My mother and my father was in the military for the Cuban Missile Crisis. And for those of you who don't know, we were quite literally
We were on the
moments.
verge. We thought, yeah.
Moments from the whole countdown to midnight. 1 minute to midnight, 2 minutes to midnight, 30 seconds to midnight, which is the concept of nuclear war. The idea was that the Russian ships were headed to this line we drew in the ocean. And American submarines and American warships were going to sink them. And that was going to be it. We were going to start a war.
Blockade. So Russia was sending nuclear weapons to Cuba. And we weren't going to stand for that.
No, because it's 100 miles off our shore. You know, it would take a missile, like, seriously, like 5 minutes and wipe out everything as opposed to half an hour, which is bad enough. But we basically said, no, this is our sphere of influence. You, we're not doing it. And my mother told stories about being in the shelter. In the shelter, watching with tick-tock, 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 because everyone knew when the ships were going to meet. They knew what time it was. Can you imagine kids sitting at home and knowing, okay, at 3:45 in the afternoon on Tuesday, you get to find out if you get to if you're going to have dinner in hell or in your house. And at 3:45, it's going to happen. I don't know if it's actually 3:45. The point was, you get to look at your clock. And so the time comes, and now you're sitting in your room, waiting for the alarm to go off, waiting for rockets to fly overhead. Can you imagine that? But that was the society in which they lived. The society in which I lived, I learned how to do the duck and cover, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But the 50s, that was a big thing in the 50s. It wasn't so much in school. When I was around, we were more worried about tornadoes.
Yeah.
Which, that's a funny thing we can talk about. Tornado drills in a house, in the schools. Oh, wow. We're all going to die. But we lived under that. And we learned to live with that fear. And we learned to live with that kind of concept of instantaneous, or not instantaneous yet horrible death hanging over us at all times. And it taught me, especially, a greater appreciation for the freedoms that we have, despite the fact that death is inevitable, and for us could have been a lot sooner than later. It sounds weird to say people now. People don't understand that now. Mm-hmm. How says you just thought about death all the time? No, but I knew it could happen. I understood that weapons could kill us. I didn't think it would, but if it did, it wasn't like, wait, what? Shoosh, missile goes over. Well,
Yeah, that's
click,
it.
30 seconds. I'm sorry, 30 minutes. That's how long we got.
Yeah.
Once a missile was launched, 30, because ours went, theirs went. They took about half an hour to get up into space and come back down. So we knew between 30 and 45 minutes we're all going to die. And it's impossible to explain that to people now. And it's impossible. People ask me all the time, well, like the COVID thing, why are this? They're frightened of this. And why do this? I'm like, seriously, guys? I lived through the Cold War. I grew up in the Cold War. I joined the military during the Cold War still. My father was in the thing. My grandfather, everybody we knew and we grew up with lived under this specter the whole time. And yet we still got to go play. We still went outside, and we, the idea when we were kids, where when you came home when the lights went on outside.
Death felt so certain, so you weren't afraid of it.
Right.
I think it allowed you to have a healthy appreciation of death. And
Yeah.
again, not a freakish thing just because of the Cold War, because all of history up until now, fear of death constantly on your mind.
Yeah.
And it gave you a healthy appreciation
Yeah.
for it and a lack of fear of it. So therefore you were able to live.
Yeah.
Now there is such a fear of death.
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether to put, maybe it's not all to blame on, the Cold War and that the way of history, but also maybe the lack and abandonment of God and an afterlife, and not having to concern yourself,
Maybe.
and the fear of that. And without that just appreciation of death in terms of, hey, that it happens, it's going to happen to me sooner or later. I'm rushing to just get done what I want to get done.
Right.
Whether it's tomorrow or whether it's 30 years from now.
Right.
I want to I get something in my head. Oh, I want to do this. Let me go do this.
Right.
And I tell people constantly, especially since we're still, tinkering with the Innocent Saga, but if I were to go tomorrow, I got my dreams.
Right.
I accomplished the things I really wanted to accomplish.
Me too.
Now it's just picking a new goal.
Right.
And going after that one. When I get a new goal, I go after that just because I know it could happen tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit and wait for COVID to go away.
Right.
Before I go out and make another movie, because COVID may not go away.
Right.
And if you're going to order, more lockdowns and this and that, sorry, you.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm not paying attention to it.
Yeah.
I'm going out and I'm going to live my life.
Right.
Because I'm not afraid of death.
Yeah.
And too many people are.
It's also, you get the idea that, I suppose one of the things that we always thought of, and we talked as kids about the war, we always talked about what's going to happen and what we're going to do. And we joked about it. It was like a morbid, it's like the song "A Ring Around the Rosie," Pocket Full of Posies, talking about the Black Plague.
Yeah.
Kids do that. We make up, and of course I was in the military. We're the most horribly morbid, sick on the planet. We make up all kinds of horrible jokes. I mean, like the napalm sticks to kids songs and all that crazy, just twisted evil we do. Which was like us as kids, basically. We were kids with guns at that point in the military. But we would joke about the war. We would joke about the stuff. Oh, you'd hear that, like the tornado sirens would go off. This is going to sound strange to people who aren't familiar with living in Texas. or the South in the summertime, but the tornado sirens would go off. We're like, oh, is it a tornado or are the Russians attacking? And that was a joke, you know. Is it the Soviets or is it a tornado?
Look at the sky. Is it
Look
planes?
at the sky. Is it planes or clouds? You know. And people like when I tell people that now, they're like, "You did what?" I was like, "Oh yeah." My friends who were like younger than 30, like you know they're like their mid 30s, whatever else. And I said, "Oh yeah, we used to hear the air raid sirens off." I was like, "Oh, the Russians bombing, or are we?"
And if it makes us sick, sadistic bastards for it, then then call me a sick, sadistic bastard, because I would much rather be able to laugh and get on with my life rather than live in terror and lock myself in a room.
And we had good childhoods. We went to the pool. Summers for me was going to the pool and hanging out and go with my friends and go to my grandparents' place and shoot guns and not chase cows, but I had to go take care of the cattle and stuff like that and shoot the snakes to make sure they didn't bite the cows. And I had a great time. Rode four-wheelers and goofed off and went swimming in holes and went to hung out with my friends and we talked about Star Wars and we played like we were Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker fighting I mean, just the stuff we did as kids, even though that very, like to talk about Return of the Jedi, even though that very summer, the day after came out. And so nuclear war was on everyone's mind again. But once again, it was always there. And so, yeah, nuclear war, but Return of the Jedi. You know, yeah, nuclear war, but we're going to go to the pool. Yeah, nuclear war, but let's go play baseball. Has COVID changed who we are? Has the idea of the fear of death changed people to be so fearful that they've lost their want for independence and freedom? Would you rather be safe or be free? You can put a lion in a cage. He's got health care, he's got food, he's got whatever else. And a lion out in the wild isn't going to live half as long, maybe even a fourth as long. What do you want to be? Do you want to be a lion in a cage, or do you want to be a lion on the plains? You're gonna die much sooner out there. You're going to live a much harder, much more difficult, hard scrabble, starving life out on the plains.
And if you want to have that argument of well, you know, I do want that safety, so don't take that away from me. You can go lock yourself in the room.
You know what?
Do not take my freedom away.
Yeah.
Though.
You want that kind of stuff? You just take your ass down somewhere and throw a brick at a window somewhere and walk out with a bunch of jewels from the. You'll be
safe as can be.
You'll get safe as can be.
Well, except for the butt rape.
Well, the ass raping. But you know, some guys like that. So just you will be safe. You'll get free. You'll get your health care. You'll get a place to live. You won't be out in the rain. You don't have to worry about do anything. You don't got to work. Mm-hmm. Just got to sit there and just goof off and do whatever you want to do. In a little holding cell, of course, because whether your prison is in your house or in a prison, you're still in prison. And if you want to live like that, that's great. I don't want to live like that. And so when you're telling me I have to live like that, that's when I'm going to give you a big old off. And you could say, well, you're doing this is for the children, it's for this. It's like, really? I remember reading in the stories, because I read history, reading about some National Socialist Party in Germany in 1937 saying we need to do stuff for the children.
And children are the most egotistical, world-centric beings on the planet. Right. They only care about themselves anyway.
It's for this. They say for the Sicherheit des Kindes, for the safety of the children. That's why they used to do stuff. You know, the Germans and the Austrians and whatever else in Germany in 1937. And for those of you who don't know what was going on in Germany in 1937, look it up. Look it up. You must look up to see what was happening back then. All right?
And we just got canceled.
No, it's one of those things where you have to understand, do you want to be safe or do you want to be free? It's a decision to make. I don't mind you wanting to be safe instead of being free. I want to be free. Are you going to try to take that from me? Because you're going to have to take it from me.
Yeah. And you have your right to be safe, but I have my right to be free.
I have my right to be.
Don't impose on it.
Right.
And I wouldn't impose on your right.